Good evening. I'm Clearman Featherstone inviting you to Security Focus. Today, I would like to deal with a few issues that have been around for quite some time and we have not perhaps given them much thought. One has to do with this whole notion of off-duty police officers trying to catch their hand. We call it moonlighting. But when we engage off-duty police officers, we have to be very, very mindful of what we are doing because you have to look at liability issues. And only a while ago, I was having a discussion on this subject. So let me deal with it briefly. Suppose you hire an off-duty police officer to work for you, remembering that the off-duty police officer is on call 24/7. The off-duty police officer comes and he works during his off-duty period with a store. He gets into an altercation attempting to put someone out of the store and the person sustains some degree of injury or there is a shootout and the off-duty police officers are the center of that shootout. Who absorbs the liability? Is it the store or the employer after four, for want of better words? Is it the Guyana Police Force or the government of Guyana? These matters have been ventilated in the courts in the US, Canada, the UK, European Union over and over and over, and they are not settled easily. And many of our business people have learned that to their own discomfort as of late with respect to the employment of off-duty police officers. So I think as Guyana develops and a business wants an officer with a firearm cannot get license for guns for their own officers, or perhaps don't have officers of their own, and they decide to go the off-duty cop route. Many of our companies have found that to be a problematic kind of business, so that we ought to give it some thought before we engage it, and perhaps talk with an attorney and have him work out the details, the modalities thereof. Next thing. During last week, I was exercising on Regent Street. And between Cummins Street and Orange Walk on the southern carriageway, you have a number of homeless people there, and they sleep there. Several vehicles would come, say from around 7 till around 10, just outside of the market, and they would bring dinner, food, all sorts of things. And these people will receive lots of food. They will return to where they sleep, and the excess food they will dump in the drain. Well, let me tell you what I saw Sunday morning. Lots of rats, the entire city, lots of rats. But on Sunday morning, there was a snake bearing markings of biting snakes coming out of the drain and heading into an area as if it was going into the store or into that compound where the store is. So this is the thing. You could turn up for work Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whatever day, and there's a snake in the store, a venomous snake in the store, bites the boss, perhaps one of his children, shopper, staff, poisonous snakes. And this is within the bounds of possibility. Most of our viewers would not know that within the last, say, 4 or 5 years, about 5 or 6 persons were bitten by poisonous snakes in Georgetown. Not Georgetown and environs, in Georgetown proper. And I know that 4 women died. Now, one was bitten on Vlissingen Road waiting for a bus, not far from the seawalls. So now we talk about the seawalls. If you go on the seawalls early in the morning, you will see lots of, perhaps at nights too, lots of rats. People dump the excess food between the rocks. You see centipedes, you see scorpions, you see rats. And I recall about 3 years ago, soldiers were exercising early in the morning, 4:45. One killed a snake on the seawall. And he says, look, there's a poisonous snake. I know them from the markings. So we have this situation of poisonous snakes in Georgetown. There was an incident in the vicinity of Eve Leary, somewhere around Eve Leary, Kingston area there. And a woman was bitten by a snake there. And I heard from a good friend that she too had died. And so the question comes, why of the persons that I would have alluded to, all being women and perhaps all having died? I can't answer the question, but I could say this much. You would have heard time and time again the old folks saying, snakes don't bite pregnant women. That's partly true. It is partly true because the same hormones that control the sexuality of a female are the same hormones that control the sexuality of reptiles, not snakes alone, reptiles in general. And so it is said that most times when snakes show aggression to women, they're essentially showing sexual aggression to them. And that is one of the reasons why even in camps and in jungle areas, snakes seldom bite prepubescent girls. They often bite women during their, women who menstruate, so to speak. So that's one of the reasons. But we need to do something about this whole business of snakes and alligators in the city. I recall one morning my wife was exercising and she was on the Aubrey Barker Road, say about 10 to 5. And she saw caiman about 10 feet in length, thereabout. Huge caiman, pregnant, laboring across the street, trying to get to the other part of Aubrey Barker Street. But going in heading towards a school compound, going through an alley to get to the area that a school is located. So we have to do something about these reptiles, almost call them parasites, but they're not, reptiles in the city. And we seem to have a difficulty with the growth, the overgrowth in the canals. But we throw all sorts of things into the canals. The overgrowth is one issue because when most of our taps, the drains in our yards, several of them will eventually end up into the canal. And what happens, the fat from the zinc and the sodium from the soap powder and the soap acts as a form of fertilizer and is responsible for the aggressive aquatic growth. So perhaps we have to find, as we develop, a way to neutralize the soap powder, the soap, and perhaps trap the fat, and so that it does not end up into the drains and act as a fertilizer, resulting in this aggressive aquatic growth. We simply cannot allow the amount of reptiles that you see in the city to continue. So, I would hope that we can sit, whether it's the municipality, the community-based groups, and try to work out something that can bring some sort of closure or try to manage this issue. When we come back, we will deal with a few other issues of import. Security Focus is brought to you by Regium International, Northwest Investment Inc., IntelliGuard Specialist Security Services, and the Institute of Security and Public Safety. Welcome back. Some time ago, I was told about an incident which occurred in the vicinity of the Stabroek Market. It had to do with a number of Guyanese men, about 6 or 8 of them, beating about 4 Cuban men to the extent that the Cubans embrace violence to extricate themselves from this mob. My informant said that, who is a foreigner also, not a Cuban, said that he was somewhat surprised that there were about 75, 80 persons within the immediate vicinity, and no one attempted to render any assistance whatsoever. He said he inquired of someone standing close by and was given this answer. The person said, well, you know, they are foreigners and they have money. We do not have money. We want money. So I guess the boys know they have a lot of money on them, and the boys are taking pay. Which brings me to an important subject. I've been traveling for quite some time. 1980, 81, beyond. And it has always shocked me that whenever I go to a port, say you go to Barbados, and you see a group of Guyanese hustlers, a group of Guyanese workers, a group of Guyanese hustlers. You go to Trinidad and you see a group of Guyanese hustlers, shoplifters, prostitutes, and the like. You go to Suriname, Paramaribo, Nikiri, and you see a group of Guyanese hustlers. You go to French Guiana and you meet a group of Guyanese hustlers, perhaps a larger group. You go to Brazil, and if you go to several of the cities in Brazil, you go to Manaus, you go to Belém, you go to Rio, and several of the cities, and you meet a group of Guyanese hustlers. And I've always wondered, and I felt there seemed to be more Guyanese out than in. And later on, when I went privileged to go to North America, you see in many of the larger cities a group of Guyanese hustlers, Canada Guyanese hustlers. And many of these Guyanese ply their trade in these foreign jurisdictions to the extent that they take criminal forms from Guyana that were not known or present in those jurisdictions before. Forms of housebreaking, biting rings off of people's hands, and the like. So, having known that, I always felt somehow that when Guyana turns the corner, we might very well deal in a hostile manner with people who come to our country in search of a better way of life. And for some reason, I always felt that Guyanese of African descent might very well be the first to deal with those people in a hostile and aggressive way. And I have said that oftentimes. So when I heard about this incident, I started to do some research. And then I discovered that Trinidadians, Barbadians, Canadians, and people from far and wide have been treated very brutally, so to speak, by many Guyanese. Only recently, I was told by a Brazilian man that he buried a nephew here because he was stabbed repeatedly during a robbery. Spoke with a relative at a function only Sunday. She's of Portuguese descent. And one of her cousins from the other side, who is Portuguese as well, he was stabbed repeatedly 9 o'clock morning on Durban Street for $2,000. Caucasians and people from further afield are suffering the brunt of our violence at this particular point. I know that this is a difficult transition for most Guyanese. And I think the churches, the social institutions, the government in particular, needs to pay very keen attention to this new development. I was talking with a Trinidadian recently who said to me that the crime in Guyana, and you should know that choke and rob and house jumping is at its highest in Guyana. It is not the kind of crime that you find a lot even in Jamaica, even in Trinidad. And I'll give an example. Once I was in Trinidad spending time with a sister, and she was living in a squatter environment. And we went to church this Saturday, and I left a pants, denim pants. She was in the process of building the bathroom in the house, and she had an outhouse and a bathroom outside. And so all of us who were staying with her, we used that. But I left the pants with $500 on the line, the pants that I had on. And somewhere along the line, while in church about 1 that day, I said, you know, sister, I left my pants with $500 on your line, the line just adjacent to the bathroom. She said, oh, don't worry with that. Trinidadians don't run line and run pocket. I know there is a passageway and about 300 people would have passed there by the time we would have gotten home. But you don't worry that Trinidadians don't go in pocket and thief close off a line. So forget it. So she allayed my fear. And when we got home the night, we went driving all about the place because many of us came from Guyana and other places and so on. They took us on a tour and bought ice cream and took out photographs and the like. And when I got home the night, about 11 or 12, I went through the back door. I saw the pants. And I went to the line. I took the pants off and I felt it like this. And the money was inside. And I went back into the house, talking about 6 years ago. So this thing about choke and rob and stabbing people for a radio or a tape or those sorts of things, it has always been high in Guyana. And at some point in time, we have to sit and try to figure what is responsible for it. When we come back, I will conclude with another observation. Security Focus is brought to you by Regium International, Northwest Investment Inc., Intelligard Specialist Security Services, and the Institute of Security and Public Safety. Welcome back. So, we have had the Canadian government, the foreign powers, the ABC countries talk about crime in our country. But I want to speak about something more specific. The Guyana Pegasus. The Pegasus Hotel has had some problems over the years, and I have never gotten out of my mind and head the incident where the foreigner was killed in a room there. I have heard recently about a fire there, and I've also heard about a high degree of pilfering at that institution, so that there is a lot going on there. But you know what? That speaks to some serious voids in the area of safety and security. And I think that institution should pay some attention to those three incidents, taking into account that somebody was killed there, that there was a serious fire there that could have caused the loss of life, and the fact that there is serious pilfering at the institution, which will severely reduce their profit. I believe that the time has come for the Chamber of Commerce and the other business advocate bodies to be less political, because some of them really are, and to come on board and assist us all to make Guyana a better place to live. I am Clement Featherstone, thanking you for having been with me this evening and wishing you the best of the remainder of today. Thank you.